The book of Daniel in chapter 12 prophesied a time period at the end where people would have great knowledge and travel all over. Well, folks, we're certainly living in that time period. But with all that great knowledge, it seems like we don't have a lot of wisdom. We're watching events unfold in the world like the war in Ukraine, where it seems like our top men and women lack any kind of discernment. What does the Bible have to say about that? Stay tuned. Well, folks, we're so glad you could join us for another episode of Prophetic Perspective. We ask, please, that you like, subscribe, and share using the information below. Tim, we're watching the war in the Ukraine unfold, and it just seems like everybody's decision-making process, they just don't know how to handle this or what to do. Why do we have so much knowledge at our fingertips, but we lack any kind of wisdom?
I think it goes back to what the writer of Proverbs, Solomon himself said, Solomon being the wisest man in all of human history, as the Lord revealed. And he said, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Now, we say knowledge today, we would define that passage as the beginning of wisdom. Because we can collect knowledge. We have institutions, even within the government, who are designed to gather intelligence. But even with all that data, all that intelligence, as you said, we seem to lack wisdom. Certainly the leaders of our nation and others today don't seem to be exhibiting very great discernment or wisdom to extricate us from situations that just grow worse and worse day by day.
I know it seems like the things that they should logically do, like seeking peace or trying to work with Putin to come with an end to this thing, or Zelensky, it seems like instead everybody's posturing and saber rattling. And it reminds me of when you read in history, just before World War I and just before World War II, the same kind of stupidity, if we can call that, amongst leaders who were posturing and looking to give it themselves their own attention, that it ended up creating wars where millions and millions of people died. Do you think that the stupidity of our leadership is pushing us towards World War? Some are even calling for World War III.
Yeah, they are calling for war right now, and that is very tragic and sad. I think you almost look back. Always, we can see in hindsight much more clearly. So back when there were violations of even human rights happening in the war in Syria, being supported by Russia at that time, former President Obama said that he was going to draw a red line. Well, that red line got crossed, and he said, well, I'll draw another line. And he didn't follow up, and people took notice. I promise you, evil actors around the world took notice that the United States was not living up to some of its commitments. And so even now, as the Biden administration declared that all of their efforts prior to Russia launching a war were to prevent, well, now President Biden claims, no, I never thought it would prevent anything. You don't deter a war with sanctions. Well, how do you stop a war with sanctions? They've never proven effective. So he's trying to have it both ways, and I think, quite frankly, he's often very confused. But again, North Korea, Iran, other evil actors in the world are paying attention. China has still got its eye on Taiwan and just recently has joined forces with Russia to offset the power of the West. And so we are in for a very upheaved period of human history in the next several months and years.
Well, you brought up a good point, I think, about what Obama did with the Iran deal back when he was president, is that he said the same thing that we're doing to Russia now with sanctions. We're going to use sanctions, we're going to cut off Iran's money, and then they'll stop building a nuclear weapon. Well, that didn't work. And so they instead, secretly behind, they shipped all cases of gold bullion over them. Okay, now we're going to basically bribe them to stop doing what they're doing. So I would expect that at some point that we'll see NATO and the United States and all join together and say, all right, if we can't stop them with sanctions, we'll stop this war in Ukraine by basically buying Putin off with maybe oil and gas contracts or promising him parts of other countries, just like Neville Chamberlain did when he gave Poland away. Yeah, it's I mean, what we've got is a dangerous, dangerous situation. Is there anything in Bible prophecy that the war in Ukraine, is the Bible prophesy this at all? Because that seems to be the number one question.
I think it is the number one question that we've gotten recently. We have said that the war in Ukraine demonstrates that, A, Russia is not down and out. Russia is still very much alive and a threat, and that under the leadership of a man who has got no limitations on his desire for more power and more conquest, someone like Vladimir Putin will turn their eye on Israel. Is this the war of Ezekiel 38 and 39? No, but you can start to see the players getting into position to align themselves for that war to take place. Right now, Christians, scattered throughout the world still are a restraining force. We're not restraining very effectively, but through the power of the Holy Spirit, we are restraining evil to a degree. When we are removed in the blink of an eye, there will be no more restraint on all of these efforts. And so I see many bad things happening. Again, when our president is asking Russia in the midst of this war to be the intermediary to try to create a relationship and a new agreement with Iran, you realize something is just out of whack, and certainly our foreign policy is today.
Well, it's like the UN on the Human Rights Commission putting all these countries that are persecuting their own people onto the Human Rights Commission. We definitely live, folks, at a very messed up time period, but the Bible prophesied that this spirit of the Antichrist, this spirit of lawlessness will rise in the last days. We definitely, Tim and I, feel like that we are in that days. The Bible clearly shows signs of the end times. The points to the Lord's soon return. And the second one that Jesus gave in Luke 21 was wars and rumors of wars. They'd increase in frequency and intensity the closer we got to the Lord's return. So from the negative perspective, yes, we're living in dangerous, perilous times, but on the plus, we know that Jesus Christ is coming soon. If you don't know Jesus today, read the book of John and accept Jesus into your heart.